Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Trisia Farrelly aho. I'm presenting on behalf of my research team, Drs. Stephanie Borrelle and Sascha Fuller, and we're grateful to the Zero Waste Network Aotearoa for organising this terrific summit, and thank you also to the Environmental Investigation Agency and Massey University for supporting the study I'll be presenting today. This year we conducted a gap analysis of policies, legislation and plans related to plastic pollution for 10 Pacific Island countries. We identified and then analysed 50 key documents in depth. These were limited to country-level legislation, policies, plans and strategies that are relevant to plastic pollution and that are publicly available. The study was based on Pillar 2 of Environmental Investigation Agency's proposed multilateral plastic pollution convention. The aim of the study was to identify the limitations of 10 Pacific Island countries in preventing plastic pollution. We identified challenges and opportunities for these countries in implementing an adaptation of EIA's second pillar into national policy frameworks. The study focused on policy and legislation that sat at the top of the waste hierarchy, so at redesign, reduction, reuse and repair. The study results and analysis were structured under the following 5 major themes. For the purpose of this brief presentation, we'll focus on the findings of 2 of these major themes, prevention and management. This was the first of the key themes, global objectives. A more granular analysis was facilitated by analysing the documents alongside the sub-themes listed on the left-hand side of the table. I've listed the sub-themes here as they're too hard to see across the top of the table. The vertical axis in the report is populated by the 50 key documents spread over the 10 participating countries. Green indicates explicit mention of the sub-theme in the document, for example, long-term elimination. Yellow indicates the document either partially includes the sub-theme or that it is inferred, and red indicates that that sub-theme is absent in the document. There is significantly more red in the prevention table than the global objectives table. A common theme across the documents was that policies and plans that claimed plastic pollution prevention as a key objective failed to provide a coherent suite of actions and targets to support that objective. However, some countries offered some pretty impressive legally supported market and trade restrictions. For example, a growing number of countries are banning the import of certain single-use plastic products, such as bags and straws. Most countries, however, have very little legislation that protects them and the region from the influx of non- or hard-to-recycle, toxic and unnecessary plastics. So those countries that have enforced bans may wish to consider working with customs, law enforcement and importers to restrict categories of plastic, for example, by a resin code, rather than individual products entering the country. Examples may include plastics containing PFAS, fluorinated polymers, cured resins, bisphenols, polystyrene, and PVC. Wrapping mandatory product stewardship schemes around difficult to ban products may also be considered. Because Pacific Island countries do not produce plastics, virgin plastics use here refers to standards, protocols, and caps on usage in the domestic manufacture of plastic products. Plastic pollution reduction targets were virtually non-existent, and there were no national plastic pollution reduction plans. In one regional plan, a plastic pollution target was set, but the 2025 target remained unchanged from baseline volumes. It's unlikely that regional targets will be realistic unless coupled with a focused and coordinated approach to preventing problematic plastics in countries across the region. The focus across all the documents analysed remained low down on the waste hierarchy at waste management, such as at landfill management and recycling. However, current management strategies can be developed to shift responses to plastics pollution higher up the waste hierarchy. This would alleviate the problem of investing in expensive management infrastructure while the plastic flows into the region in increasing volumes and increasingly problematic forms. Shifting waste management to waste prevention may be achieved with sustainable financing mechanisms. for example, extended producer responsibility or product stewardship schemes. There are a growing number of container deposit schemes in the Pacific. However, most countries lack space and resources for domestic recycling plants and can't secure international markets for the recyclables. For example, PET bottles have been stockpiling for some time in several countries. A centrally located and regionally coordinated container deposit scheme for PET could provide the economy of scale required to support struggling national CDSs, container deposit schemes. Transportation challenges faced in the collection, sorting and processing of plastics may be overcome by legislating backloading. And backloading could be incentivised if transport companies were to receive a portion of the container deposit scheme handling fee. There may also be an opportunity to introduce a carbon offsetting arrangement. Domestic product stewardship schemes such as PET container deposit schemes could over time be expanded to capture a broader range of materials and to operate further up the waste hierarchy at refillables and reusables. This can only be achieved if the unredeemed deposits, for example, are fed back into the scheme. The additional benefit of mandatory product stewardship schemes is that they level the playing field for those involved in the plastic supply chain and they prevent free riding. Well-designed schemes can also incentivise the design of safer and more sustainable products and a shift to products with a higher recycled content. They can also incentivise reuse up the zero waste hierarchy over recycling. Well-designed container deposit schemes can ensure offshore plastics producers are responsible for the full life cycle of their products, including what happens to them post-export to the Pacific region. The key objective might be to establish take-back schemes, reverse logistics, or other forms of repatriation to ensure plastics and other problematic materials are removed from the region at end of life and that producers responsibly manage these at point of origin. The area with the most green here is enforcement, and yet while plenty of articles for strict enforcement are found in the legislation across the study countries, strategies and plans state that enforcement is weak due to lack of resources and geography. The only document that referenced microplastics was Palau, which plans to control virgin pellets or the pre-production pellets or noodles. This is outlined in their National Solid Waste Management Strategy. The study identified opportunities to implement legislation and strategies to prevent plastic pollution and to strengthen pre-existing plastic pollution management policies by shifting the focus further up the waste hierarchy. There is evidence of lack of access to and interpretation of the latest science-based evidence on plastic pollution. And this is likely the reason for the lack of references to microplastics, plastics additives, monomers, persistent organic pollutants, invasive species and pathogens, and health and climate change across the key documents. There are a few traditional and local alternatives to plastics and packaging offered, and there is a much greater emphasis in investing in changing consumer behaviour. For example, awareness-raising campaigns at village level, instead of investing in changing behaviour of producers or importer behaviour, for example, through extended producer responsibility certification schemes. We also identified a lack of interministerial coordination specific to plastics and beyond waste management. We've made a range of recommendations in the report, but here we focus on one key recommendation: the development of national plastics elimination action plans supported by national multi-sectoral consultation by multi-ministerial committees. So national plastics elimination plans would go some way to addressing the full life cycle of plastics. They could prioritise prevention over end-of-pipe solutions, such as landfill expansion, and they could build strong resistance to powerful industries selling false solutions such as bioplastics, waste-to-energy, and downcycling technologies. National plastic pollution elimination plans would include labour laws to support informal waste workers, and legislation would be flexible enough to incorporate new materials as they were released onto the global market. National plastic pollution elimination plans could also help prevent problematic plastics passing through customs. This would be strengthened with support from regional coordination and public-private partnerships. Preventing plastic pollution in the Pacific region and around the world relies on the regulation of the most powerful plastics producers at source. A key recommendation in this report is the support for a multilateral plastic pollution convention. The convention would address the full life cycle of plastics, including the safe design of products, prevention of plastic pollution at source, and the prevention of the transboundary flows of plastic pollution.